you hit the record. Okay. All right. Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. On behalf of the Center for Chinese Studies here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, I would like to welcome everyone to our Spring 2024 CCS webinar series. And today's session featured as a panel discussion on the topic, A Decade of Cross-Cultural Collaboration, how Hawaii inspired China's Children's Museum development. My name is Mingbao Yu from the Department of East Asian Languages and Literatures, where I teach and research 20th century Chinese literature, film, and culture. Currently, I'm also serving as the CCS director, and I would like to introduce here the CCS staff that includes Associate Director Dr. Ni Zhang and academic support staff Jessie Jianshan, who will monitor the chat room and assist with any logistical queries you may have about today's session. A couple of procedure reminders. Feel free to use the chat room for posting any technical or other queries, but please use the Q&A tool for submitting your comments and questions to the speakers, which will be answered during the Q&A session. We kindly ask that you please keep your comments concise and ask no more than 2 questions. As much as possible, questions will be answered in the order they have been submitted, but we might also synthesize or group together similar questions in order to save time and make room for other comments and queries. We further reserve the right to dismiss comments and questions that are not relevant or civil in tone. After today's session, you will receive a brief survey, and we would greatly appreciate your constructive feedback. Today's session will be recorded and then uploaded to our CCS YouTube channel, where you also find previously recorded webinar sessions in case you missed them. Our full CCS webinar program flyer for this semester can be found on our CCS website. If you click on your chat room now, you can see the links for our CCS YouTube channel and CCS website displayed there. Today's session is also kindly co-sponsored by the Hawaii's Children's Discovery Center and the Children's Museum Research Center at Beijing Normal University in China. Many thanks to our 2 co-sponsors for their kind support. And now it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce the organizer, moderator, and one of the 3 panelists today, namely CCS Associate Director Dr. Ni Zhang, who will introduce her 2 panelists after my introduction of her. Dr. Zhang graduated from the Masters of Education program at the Teachers College at Columbia University and earned her Doctor of Education degree from Johns Hopkins University. Before joining CCS this January, she worked at the Children's Museum Research Center at Beijing Normal University, of which she is also the founding director, and where she piloted 2 very successful children's museums in China. Being a noted pioneer in the children's museum development in China, she also serves as the ambassador in China for the International Association for Children in Museums. Recently, she was invited to contribute a chapter on informal learning and the role of parents to the research section of the book, Education for Social Justice, The Meaning of Justice in Current Research, published by Routledge Press in December 2023. And edited by Nicholas Michelli, who is the presidential professor in the PhD program in urban education at City University in New York. So without further ado, let me turn over to Dr. Zhang.
Thank you, Mingbao, and thank you everyone for joining today's webinar, especially thank all audience coming from China. I know it's very early. So our today's topic is about decade cross-cultural collaboration. And the panelists, I'll start introducing first Liane Usher, president of Hawaii Children's Discovery Center. And she's a great friend, is a passionate educator and advocate for early childhood education. So she joined the Hawaii Children's Discovery Center in 2001, and she played a pivotal role in shaping the vision and mission of the organization. So she graduated from Punahou, a local Hawaiian, and she received a bachelor degree in elementary education and psychology from Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts, and earned her master's degrees in education from Harvard Graduate School of Education. Another panelist today is Xin Liu. We call him Edward. Thank you, Edward, for joining us at 6 o'clock in the morning. He's now the executive director of Children's Museum Research Center at the Faculty of Education, Beijing Normal University. And since joining CMRC in 2013, he has been instrumental in our Children's Museum projects, contributing his expertise throughout the planning, exhibition, and program design and operation phase. So he also led the drafting of the guidance for Children's Museum in China and the practical guidance for children's museum education in China. So thank you, Edward, for your really hard work for the past 10 years. And also thank you for coming for this webinar. So today we'll have a three-part of a story for the past 10 years to share with you. So Liane will talk about the origin of the story for this first section, and then I'll talk about our cross-cultural collaboration in the past 10 years. And in between 2 and 3, we'll share a video so you can look at the our projects in action and also hearing what children, family, and educator researchers talk about those projects. And then Edward will talk about ongoing impacts of CMRC, which may inspire your thinking on cross-cultural projects. Okay, so now I'll turn to Liane to start our origin of the story. Thank you, Liane.
Thank you, Ni, and hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be joining all of you here today. Hopefully there's some of you listening in that have been to the Discovery Center before, or at least have heard about what we are. We're a children's museum, and we have all hands-on interactive exhibits, all designed for children to learn through play. And so a little bit about the history of the Children's Museum. So the Children's Discovery Center was founded by my mom, Loretta Yajima. And Loretta started her career as a Head Start teacher and later became the administrative director at Hawai'i School. And so teaching and inspiring children has always been her passion and her life's work. In 1986, while she was working at Hawai'i, Loretta was approached by a group of parents who asked her to help start a children's museum in Hawaii. And Loretta at that time had never heard about the concept of a children's museum. And so she actually traveled to the mainland and visited a few children's museums to learn more about what they were. And after she visited those museums, she realized how important it was for the children in Hawaii to have one of their own. So it was at that point that she agreed to help spearhead the efforts of building a children's museum in Hawaii. So in 1988, Castle and Cook donated a 5,000 square foot space in Dole Cannery for the site of the future museum. And then in 1989, the Children's Museum of Arts, Culture, Science, and Technology opened to the public. But quickly after 4 years, the museum outgrew that space and plans were made to develop a permanent site. Yeah, great. So Loretta searched long and hard for a suitable site for the new museum. And in 1992, the state included the museum in the Kaka'ako Redevelopment Master Plan. So at the time, Kaka'ako was landfill and the site of the Old City incinerator. And so once the Kaka'ako site was secured, Loretta began fundraising efforts to raise over $12 million to renovate the Old City incinerator into what is now the Children's Discovery Center. And she used to always say that many told her it could not be done, but she was very persistent and she never gave up on her dream to make it happen. So in 1997, the center broke ground. And in 1998, the Children's Discovery Center opened with 38,000 square feet of hands-on interactive exhibits. And Loretta always said that we're the only children's museum that started in a pineapple factory and ended up in an Old City incinerator. So I found this article that Loretta wrote about the transition from the old museum to the new one. And I just wanted to read it because I thought it applied very well to this. She said, "As we grew, our mission also expanded. Our commitment to serving children and their families in Hawaii now also include visitors from the US and abroad. With our name change from the Hawaii Children's Museum to the Children's Discovery Center, we adopted the tagline, Hawaii's Rainbow Connection to the World, in hopes that the Discovery Center would enable our children to gain the skills needed to make a difference in the world someday, and that our center would impact children everywhere around the globe." And so at the time, I'm sure Loretta never would have dreamed that our little museum here in Hawaii would inspire the children's museum movement in China. And so now that kind of brings us to the fateful day when Loretta first met Mr. Liu, who is a Chinese businessman and philanthropist. Loretta was so proud of the work that she did in China that she often wrote many articles about meeting Mr. Liu and the work that she did. So I thought it would be most fitting to read to you Loretta's encounter of Mr. Niu's first visit to the Discovery Center in her own words. So Loretta wrote, "The first time I met Mr. Niu, he and his group were on their way to play golf with my husband Tyler, who was hosting the group. My husband suggested that he visit the Children's Discovery Center that morning since Mr. Niu was interested in education. I could tell by their body language that they were all wondering, why are we here? So we began our visit here as a child would, from the beginning. The first gallery we entered is called Fantastic You, which is all about your body and how it works. When Mr. Niu climbed on the bicycle and pedaled alongside the skeleton, his mind started moving as fast as his feet. He became mildly interested. When he saw our doll named Stuffy, and I showed him how we use the exhibit to explain to children how the organs in our body work, he was fascinated. When we moved to the next gallery, Your Town, and took money from the ATM machine, became an auto mechanic, a TV anchor, and a police officer, something started clicking in his mind. While the others were politely listening to me talk, he was thinking about what he was experiencing. When we went to the market with shelves lined with groceries, it was typical child's play. However, when I pressed a button that activated a small video that showed how milk comes from cows, not the grocery shelf, he was engaged. And that was the beginning of our great adventure to bring children's museums to the children and families of China. So after that visit to the Discovery Center, Mr. Niu was so impressed with the facility and inspired by Loretta that he requested another meeting with her later that evening. And Mr. Niu recognized the value of a children's museum and the concept of hands-on learning. And he became determined to revolutionize early childhood education in China by bringing the concept of a children's museum to the families of China. So Loretta suggested that he spend some time visiting other children's museums across the country, and she offered to assist in those efforts. And through the Lao Nu Foundation, Mr. Niu arranged an early education innovation study tour in 2012 and asked Loretta to lead the tour. So the participants included key members of his foundation, government officials, and early education scholars. So during the US study tour, that included visits to the Indianapolis Children's Museum, Please Touch Children's Museum, and the Port Discovery Museum. It also included meetings at the Association of Children's Museums headquarters, as well as a visit to the White House. So during the tour, Mr. Niu strengthened his commitment to start an educational reform movement in China. And during one of the meetings at the Association of Children's Museums, the group inquired if there were currently any children's museums in China. And it was at that time that they were introduced to Ni, as she had opened the Magic Bean House in 2010. So after the US tour, Loretta was invited to visit China, and that became the start of Loretta's journey to help build children's museums in China.
Thank you, Liane, for your starting the story for us. So I'll continue our journey talking about our cross-cultural collaboration since then. So that's start our 10 years work together. So before I introduce the details, I want to give you milestones, like the big picture of the whole development. So after 2011, Mr. Niu visited HCDC. So we started the project in 2012. And also at the same time, 2013, CMRC, Children's Museum Research Center, was established to support these pilot projects. And we have two children's museums, one opened in 2015, another bigger one in Mr. Niu's hometown in Huhat, opened in 2017. So after completing these two pilot projects in 2019, CMRC had a strategic transition from a project management to building a community of practice in the museum field in China. So Liane talked about this little museum, Magic Bean House, I built back in 2010. So when I went back to China after getting my Master of Education at Teachers College, Columbia University, I recognized difference between China and US in terms of education. So with my family funding and hope to bring this idea to China, we started this little museum. And today I'm still happy that I did that. I made that decision because that little museum and kind of dream leading towards we have today in China. Since that time, Magic Bean House was the only member from China in the Association of Children's Museum in the US. So that's how Mr. Liu was directed to me through this association. But we quickly find out we have the same mission. So that's why we quickly start a collaboration together. So our mission is similar to advance early childhood education in China. And I want to tell a little story behind this because Loretta told me many times about this story. When Mr. Liu met with her the second day after visiting her museum, because he cannot speak English, so they have an interpreter to help translating his ideas. And the interpreter used a word, said Mr. Liu want to revolutionize early childhood education in China. So Loretta was struck by the word revolutionize. She was like thinking what she's supposed to do, revolutionizing something in China. And she talked about interesting story. She went to the library and looking for books about Sun Yat-sen and trying to understand the context and what she's gonna do. So when we met, we often joking about this, like I said, is probably means transforming or advancing. It's not like such a huge word. So this is the objectives Mr. Liu constantly talking about why he want to do something in China, like Children's Museum. That's the objectives he mentioned about. I think if you're an educators, you know how important this is for children to thrive in the future. And Loretta also mentioned that she was so surprised because Mr. Liu, he himself is an entrepreneur, grassroots businessman. He does not know anything about education, but he quickly knows the essence of Children's Museum and why this is so important for children. So, so these objectives also become the guidelines during project development. So this is the first project we have. We have 3 collaborators. First is China National Children's Center. The center at that time have an empty building. We're lucky. And they also can apply for some funding to renovate the whole building. And Liane Foundation, they funded for the exhibit design and fabrication. So at that time, we established CMRC and we work with Loretta and her museum, HCDC, constantly helping with the project management. So this whole process has a lot of collaboration, among different departments or institutions. And I want to say, like, when we're choosing a partner in China, Ms. Liu does have his strategic thinking because China National Children's Center was established in 1980s. At that time in China, Chinese government built a lot of children's palace or children's centers across China to provide after-school activities for children. So this China National Children's Center serves as a model for all of them in China. So Mr. Liu's logic was like, if we do something or change something in the model, other people will just follow. So I think after facts, it turns out he's correct, so correct about this choice. So here's the picture of the museum inside of it. And we will show you a video later on. You can see the museum in action. And so this is some basic numbers of a museum. It's a 19,000 square feet exhibition and accepted a 60.5 million donation from Liane Foundation. And also right now it's a customer, like visitors has like 170,000 visitors every year. And also another number I want to mention, like the museum at the beginning, every year it has like 500 plus study groups. People want to see the museum, want to understand the concept, want to learn from it. So that's also what I said. It's a really correct for Mr. Liu's strategy, like choosing this location to have this pilot project. So you can see the picture. Kids and families are lining up there, waiting for the museum to be opened. So the most complaints we get is we can't get the tickets. There's so many people trying to book tickets online because they have a limited number, so they can't just easily get one. So it's a huge success. We're very happy about it. And then the second project, the collaboration is more complicated because it's the bigger projects. So we have a Hawai'i municipal government involved because they provide the land and also funding for building construction. It's a huge project. So they have funds for that. And also involve another Hawai'i Children's Activity Center. It's a center I mentioned, like it's everywhere in China. Every city have such kind of a center. So they manage the building construction, also part of the exhibition fabrication. For Liane Foundation, also they provide funding for project design and partial funding for exhibit fabrication. So we also, like CMRC and HCDC, serve as a project management and the master planning and exhibit design and fabrication. So this is the renderings. It's a huge project. We have a children's museum, preschool, children's athletic center, and public square, like combined together. It's a complex. So it has a huge building size, 839,000 square feet. And we have exhibition areas more than 69,900. And it's claimed to be the largest children's museum in Asia. And Liane Foundation donated 18 million US dollars into this project. As you can see, when the museum opened, we also got the free admission with local government funding support. So right now the collaboration is also very innovative. We have nonprofit organization running the whole museum and working with the local government to secure the funding for operation, so it can be free for all the children. Currently, its visitors is more than 200,000 every year. So that's a snapshot of the project. And I want to talk a little bit more about the collaborative process. This is actually part of my doctorate research. I have those questions while I'm working on this project. So in China, if you know the process in the past 30, 40 years, it has been gone through a dynamic social transformation. Parents in China have read all kinds of parenting books translated from the US or other Western countries. So they have this kind of a shifting value. They don't know what is the best for their children because they have different culture or different way of thinking, different way of parenting. So that is the context we're working on. And also when we talk about the creativity, you know, children's design creativity, like fostering creativity is the most important thing, but actually it has different conceptualization in the US and in China. So we have a lot of constraints if we're working on creativity in China because we have all sorts of cultural, academic, like family, or like understanding of learning is so different. So when I have the interview with the parents, they always think creativity is important for children when they're early. And then when I ask them about what is important ability their children needs to have in order to get into a school, be successful in the future, they never mentioned about creativity. They talked about self-discipline, they talked about the learning ability, they talked about some other things. So I think that idea in China has a different conceptualization, and we have to think about how to include that idea in China in our children's museum so parents would not feel like it's irrelevant. So our collaboration is quite complicated because when you're building a children's museum, it has several steps. Starting the idea, we have American Children's Museum ideas. We need to combine it with Chinese local culture because we need to make sure the museum is relevant to local families. I think I remember one of the designers from Cambridge 7, his name is Peter, and he talked about his idea of combining this two. He said a metaphor like a concept of children's museum like a bottle from the US. We will have to pour the local water in it. Like what is the Chinese local culture or local content we can put into this water? So this idea really give us some hint how we can do things. So with American teams, we talked to local educators, children, families, government officials. We talked to everyone. We tried to listen to everyone and incorporate their ideas into our concept. So because we wanted to be a local people's treasure in the future. So I'm happy, like we're so happy that those very complicated process actually paid off eventually. So I need to say like during each stage, like design, fabrication, operation, there's a learning process for both sides. Like we constantly have conflicts and don't understand each other and don't know why you do things like this. So Loretta and Hawaii Children Discovery Center played a pivotal role in such process because some of the American designers or American teams, sometimes they don't understand why Chinese people do things like that. They will complain to Loretta and Loretta will complain to me, and I'll have to tell the story from my perspective or my understanding why they're doing things like this. Is there logic behind it? So then she can talk to American teams and try to make them understand why this has happened this way. So there's a lot of detailed, very complicated communication in all those processes, but we're happy we did those things because you can imagine if you're from one culture, you take something for granted, and that something might not be a norm in another culture. So something might be broken in the process because the misunderstanding, because we just don't understand each other. Those trivial things will cause the problems or make the projects to be a failure. So we're happy we worked through all this with Loretta's help and Hawaii Children's Discovery Center's help. And as Liane just talked about, that's kind of a mission inside Loretta's heart. She wants to be the bridge between the East and the West, so we can try to understand each other. So when I try to find a word map to represent Hawaii's pivotal role in this process, like the word map showing always look like this. It's geographically correct because like east to west, but I can't find Hawaii on this map. I'm not happy. So I tried my best to find the word map from another perspective. Geographically not so correct, but we can see Hawaii on this map in the middle. So I'm really happy I got this one. And I'm also very fortunate to feel like we can serve as a rainbow between East and West, just as Loretta said before. So also I want to take in this opportunity to thank Center for Chinese Studies to include me in this new journey. So I hope I can continue the legacy in bridging the West and East in my future projects in CCS. Okay, thank you so much for listening to my part of story. And then I'll start the video so you can see our museum projects in action and also hearing people talking about our projects in China.
Founded in 1985, Hawaii Children's Discovery Center stands as the first and only museum tailored specifically for children in Hawaii. The center's mission is to provide an environment that encourages children to use their senses of touch, sight, hearing, and smell to gain a better understanding of the world around them. In 2011, Mr. Gensheng, the founder of Laonyo Foundation, was inspired by the Hawaii Children's Discovery Center and decided to introduce Children's Museum to China. Subsequently, 2 children's museums have successively opened to the public. As the years passed, what do the children visiting the museums experience and feel?
你滚动小球球的地方是有个球球划一个轨道，那个轨道，然后轨道到尽头的时候就会停在一个框框里。它滑的时候就像在滑滑梯，我感觉我也在滑滑梯。
旁边攀爬那里我觉得比较锻炼我们手足协调能力及我们的比如说探索。爬上去之后就比较有喜悦感和自豪感。
我最喜欢在搬运东西的那块玩，几个小朋友一起，一人对应一个那个图案，然后下去一人去那个运，之后其他的小朋友就把那个砖块扔下去。然后呢，可以锻炼咱们的动手能力，而且还可以让我们学会团结。我墙后面这个是折纸飞机，我知道了电力发展，然后我还知道风力可用什么也能推动，然后怎么折火箭，怎么折纸飞机。
What do parents think of Laonyo Children's Discovery Museums?
场馆给大家提供的这个场所里边有很多东西是咱们平时没法接触到的，给了孩子一种亲身体验的那个机会。就比如说这个牛，我觉得你说如果没有这个牛，孩子们现在生活当中根本说想象不到这个牛，现在甚至在咱们城市地方都很少能见得到。但是来了这儿，他能轻松的去体验这个挤牛奶的这个感觉。我觉得就把孩子的各个器官都调动起来，这个特别好。
我开始带着我们家孩子来的时候，不管是干什么，他都有点小心翼翼的放不开。可是通过这段时间，我觉得只要领他进来，他都会自己找自己想玩的东西，开朗了，比较爱说了。有时候玩了什么还跟我 回去以后还说周六日一有活动的时候，我就会带他来。小的时候可能对咱们2楼那边的一个沙子比较感兴趣，现在呢可能就喜欢一些探索的东西。各个年龄段可能发展的不一样，他的兴趣爱好也会有所改变。
他可能要比其他的像我们这些纯玩的场要更具一些智力开发啦，包括生活体验啦，包括这些科学制作啦，帮助孩子用各种体验式的、沉浸式的参与到所有的活动中，不是纯玩，就是在玩中去学习，然后慢慢的去融入到一些生活的常识，最终提高在玩中能够提高自己很多的安全意识啦这种。
During the construction of the two children's museums, CMRC had been providing comprehensive support. Afterwards, based on these two museums, CMRC facilitated the development of children's museum education in China through various means, such as establishing research networks and communication platforms, and organizing training programs. How do museum educators perceive the efforts of CMRC?
从2020年开始，我们参加了由研究中心组织的社群学习，
这让我们有机会学习到扎实的前沿理论和丰富的实践案例。
我们在实践中进行反思和研究，逐渐具备了用研究来促进实践、用实践来丰富研究的整体思维。
同时，我们还收获了一群热心博物馆儿童教育的伙伴们，一起为让世界尊重每一个儿童而努力。
Hi, I'm Pat Rodewald. I'm an American museum educator, and I've been living in China for about the past 10 years. During that time, I've had the opportunity to get to know colleagues at the Children's Museum Resource Center and to participate in some of the programs they offer. CMRC provides a valuable resource for professional development and parent education through their trainings and workshops, webinars, publications, and conferences. I see the CMRC as a platform for Chinese and foreign colleagues to share best practices with each other. Ultimately, CMRC provides support for a community of practice for educators in China, which enriches and strengthens learning experiences for children and their families in museums.
CMRC has established 2 children's museums in China and published construction guidelines. This initiative has significantly contributed to raising awareness within the Chinese museum community regarding the importance of catering to children and family audiences. Over the past decade, CMRC has played a crucial role in bridging the gap between theory and practice. They translate academic publications, launched a professional journal, first a community of practice for curators, researchers, educators, and parents. These efforts have empowered early childhood museum learning in China.
罗老师呢一直非常关心中国儿童中心和儿童探索馆的发展，在场馆的建立和运营期间，给予了我们非常多的帮助和支持。他是一个非常温暖的人，从他的身上呢，我们感受到了一种精神，对孩子无私平等的爱，对教育的深深的情结和对儿童博物馆理念执着的坚持。他的精神深深地鼓舞着场馆的每一个人。未来呢，我们也将带着罗老师的期许，努力促进儿童博物馆教育事业在中国更好的发展。
Okay, special thanks to Edward and his team to compile everything together to showcase our projects in action and all the talks from families and children, as well as practitioners in the field. So right now I'll turn this to Edward. He's going to talk about the ongoing impacts of CMRC and what he has been doing to continue the legacy of Loretta and Hawai'i Children's Discovery Center. Come on, Edward.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Thank you for having me here. It's truly an honor for me to have the opportunity to talk about how Hawaii has inspired China's Children's Museum development. I am Xin and from CMRC. the Children's Museum Research Center. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to Nia and Lian's presentation for their wonderful presentations. Through their slide, I was reminded of the past decade, reminiscing about Loretta and recalling the wonderful moment we shared in Hawaii, Beijing, and Hohhot. Now I will follow up on Lee and Ni's presentation and introduce what CMRC has been doing, particularly the ongoing impact from Hawaii. CMRC is part of Beijing Normal University. It was founded in April 2013, initially within the Philanthropy Research Institute. As Ni mentioned earlier, during the first 5 years at the Research Institute, with the help of Loretta, the Discovery Center, Liane, and CMRC established 2 pilot children's museums. In 2019, CMRC transferred to the Faculty of Education, and our focus shift from building children's museum to promoting the educational philosophy of children's museum, making various types of museum, history, science, art, natural history museum more child-friendly. This also means our scope of work have expanded. CMRC's mission and vision has also been upgraded to empower early learning in museums through research-based practice, aiming to build a world that honors the uniqueness of every child. To achieve the mission, CMRC primarily focused on 2 areas: research and promotion. In terms of research, CMRC built a network to delve into the educational philosophy and the practice of children's museum in a scientific approach. CMRC draws on research findings to provide insights that can be adapted by decision maker. On the other hand, to promote children's museum in China, CMRC provide guidance, organize industry conferences, build connections and platforms, created professional development opportunities, and share valuable resources and information. Loretta used to travel across China to advocate for children's museum. She often said that knowing why is more important than knowing how. Although she had left us, her spirit of questioning why continued to influence our work. Therefore, we often ask ourselves, why are we doing these things? Because we believe children are our future. As major informal learning environments, museums have a social responsibility and a unique opportunity to serve young children. What we do is to help museums better meet the developmental need of children. And who do we work with? Next slide. Mainly researchers, museum professionals, and decision makers. Next, I will focus on some highlights of CMRC. For example, the establishment of 2 pilot children's museums, as Ni detailed earlier. One is in Beijing, the capital city of China. Last slide. One is in Beijing, the capital city of China. It's part of a national children's center, while the other is in Hohhot, also my hometown. It's located in a border province of China, similar to Hawaii, with a diverse population, including Mongolia, Hui, Han, Korea, Manchu, and more. Hawaii is a cultural melting pot, so is Hohhot. Therefore, the Hohhot Children's Museum features identity recognition and multiculturalism. You may have noticed the exhibit in the top left corner from Hohhot Children's Museum and the one in the bottom left from the Beijing Children's Museum. Both were inspired by Mr. Bone from Hawaii Children's Discovery Center. It was this exhibit that impressed Mr. Liu, the founder of the foundation, and prompted him to bring Children's Museum back to China. Yeah. Based on the experience accumulated from building 2 children's museums, In 2019, CMRC released the guidance for Children's Museum in China, explaining what a children's museum is, why it is an educational environment, a public institution, and a unique organization based on where it is. As I mentioned earlier, CMRC's work scope has expanded from children's museum to all types of museums. Therefore, in 2021, we also released the practical guidance for children's museum education in China, listing how to demonstrate respect and understanding for young visitors in terms of space, exhibition, program, service, and staff. And additionally, CMRC collaborates with 9 museums to conduct research on young visitors. These museums include well-known ones like the National Museum of China, Nanjing Museum, Shanghai Natural History Museum, as well as some local and small-scale museums. Peer to Days, CMRC in collaboration with next slide. Peer to Days, CMRC in collaboration with Columbia University complete an evaluation study based on the Beijing Children's Museum. In terms of publication, CMRC has translated, edited, and published a series of books, including the Collective Vision, Starting and Sustaining a Children's Museum, Dr. Shan Schaefer's Engaging Young Children in Museums and Object Lessons and Early Learning. Articles co-written by Loretta and me, introducing what the children's museums are, have been published in one of the Chinese most renowned museum journals. CMRC also has its own journals, released quarterly. In China, there isn't a specialized journal in this field, so this is the first one and only one featuring articles from museum floor staff and kindergarten teachers. CMRC also organized online conferences like today's. There are 2 types of online conferences. One is called webinar, focusing on one topic, inviting 1 or 2 senior researchers to provide a comprehensive insight. The theme is usually set as Museum Plus, such as Museum Plus Children's Aviation Education, Museum Plus STEM Learning, Museum Plus Art Education, and even one on Museum Plus Forensic Science for Children. The other type of online conferences is called Roundtable, which is relatively relaxed and informal, often focusing on one specific issue. This event is one of them. In addition, we also target the parents group, discussing how to take children to different types of museums, or how to talk about life and death in museum with children, how children with autism can visit museum. Through these online conferences, we aim to spread the concept of children's museum. For museum professionals, we also offer online micro lecture series and courses. Next slide. And next slide. Since CMRC is currently the only research center in China, the annual seminar has become a platform for the gathering of the industry professionals. So far, 5 sessions has been held, and we hope that in the future, professionals from the Hawaii, the United States, and even around the world can participate in the conference to facilitate the children's museum development in China. Loretta attend to many conferences across China, encourage people to build children's museums. These pictures are from the symposium she attended, just a part of them. Yes. And in addition, the Hawaii Children Discovery Center, Boston Children's Museum, the Bank Street College of Education have also held many training workshops with CMRC. And next slide. You may know in China, WeChat is a super app similar to a combination of Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. CMRC also utilized social media to spread children's museum education. Currently, nearly 20,000 people follow CMRC's WeChat account, and over 2,000 are in CMRC's WeChat group. These are the things CMRC is doing. I'd like to say that the starting point of the journey was Mr. Liu's visit to the Hawaii Children Discovery Center. Hawaii left a deep impression on Mr. Liu, and it has had a impact on China's children's museum development, which continue to this day. To be honest, starting something that no one else have done before in any place is difficult. As Liane mentioned, Loretta worked very hard to raise funds to establish the Hawaii Children Discovery Center. After these 10 years, now we have a deeper understanding of the challenging Loretta once faced. I remember what she said, which is still encouraged me to persevere in the most difficult of times. And she said, please help me to play the
When
button.
you have to work hard. My Chinese father taught me this. When you have to work hard for something, you appreciate it. You believe in it. You're committed to it. You will be dedicated to making it succeed because you put your blood, your sweat, and your tears into it.
Yeah. Finally, I want to say thank you. Thank you, Loretta. Thank you, Discovery Center, and thank you, Hawaii. 2023 marks the 10th anniversary of CMRC's founding. We have produced a short video to pay tribute to all our friends. I would like to play it here to conclude my presentation. Thank you.
So next one, I'm focusing more on language that's appropriate.
欢迎大家参加由中国儿童博物馆教育活动中心主办的第奥运文博会研讨会。
When somebody gets out of the university and
just go in depth, and that's a little case study. We can talk about this more.
Sorry.
它应该是一种发现、掌握和适应不断的变化的。
Let the child's interests or your interest.
National model in museum-based education for young children. And then they added, but we're not exactly
可能你之前没有听说过儿童博物馆，
没有关系。应该会明白儿童博物馆教育在做什么。
Thank you, Ni.
Thank you, Edward, and special thanks to CMRC team who put together everything and brought a lot of great memories to us. So I think our talk will just end today, and then we'll open up the panel discussion. We already have some questions from the Q&A, and also I'll first stop sharing my screen so everyone can see our panelists for today. So before we move on to the questions from Q&A, I prepared some questions for Liane and Edward so they can share some of their insights, or maybe also prompt some thinking from the audience if they have more questions. So Liane, I know you work with Loretta at the time, and also you kind of representing her voice here. We really miss her. So what is the challenge for your museum or Loretta or you throughout the collaborative process? Any culture shock or conflict? So we want to hear some stories. How did you manage through that process?
Sure. I think for Loretta, probably one of the greatest challenges was just, the amount of work and the time she needed to put in to dedicate to this project. She traveled quite frequently to China and also had to work with the US fabricators and designers. And I know the travel schedule was pretty grueling. And as soon as she got there, it was, nonstop. But she loved it, and she believed in this project so much that, she would have done anything for all of you. And also with Loretta just focusing so much on the China projects, it did make it difficult for her to kind of, focus her attention to our museum here. And so that was a little bit of a challenge for us. But of course, we knew that the work that she was doing was so important. And, she trained us well to be able to keep things going in her absence. So that was probably one of the challenges. And I know another challenge was just some of the complexities of coordinating between the US designers and China. The businesses and government run so differently than they do in the US. And so things like the contract negotiations and the payment schedules, things like that weren't always executed like they typically would be in the US. But those were all things that I believe you all overcame pretty successfully. And
Yes,
I think
I
just
remember
there
those
might have been a
stories.
little bit of self-doubt too, I think was a challenge. I know that she was often, the very beginning overwhelmed, like, how can I contribute? Will I be able to do this? But of course she was very persistent and never gave up. And so, yeah.
I remember her persistence.
Yeah.
And also she talked, even though she complains about all these trivial things, but she still do it, whatever way. So yeah, thank you for sharing all those moments, and you still can help me remembering all those small moments that we had together. So I think, as Loretta always say, Hawaii serves as a rainbow between East and West, and your museum is actually a great model in doing that thing, to connecting East and West, bridging the cultures. So I would like to share some insights about this role, and I think maybe some other institutions are trying to do some cross-cultural projects or is planning to do so, may get some insights from you. So if you could share some ideas, like how you could play that role.
Sure.
That might be helpful.
Well, I know Loretta was, so very proud that our museum served as a model for the museums in China. I know for her, she always really believed and would always say, you know, children are our future. And she always, you know, as cliche as it might have sounded, she always said, you know, she really wants world peace. And so, you know, in order to achieve that, she really felt that children needed to, you know, develop positive concepts and to teach them from a young age, you know, really good values and the power of education. And so I actually, when I was preparing for this and reading through more of her writings, I found this other excerpt where she said, you know, helping children understand themselves, others, and the world around them was, for me, the first step towards world peace. Working together with the Liane Foundation is an opportunity for the children in China to have a connection with us here in Hawaii and the US, which is an important first step toward the fulfillment of that goal. So even though I know that it was a lot of hard work, Loretta never shied away from hard work. And, you know, she would absolutely advocate for anyone who is interested in doing some collaborations with China or other parts of the world to not be afraid of that hard work and to embrace it because there's so much good that will come from these collaborations together.
Thank you, Liane, for sharing that. And I think you reminds me of the time Loretta always talked with me. I care about the word peace, and I don't know how our children are going to live in that world if we have so many conflicts, so many like contradictories with each other. And she worried so much. I was like, you were thinking like you are the president of the US or the, like you're thinking like you're the head of the United Nations, you know. She cares about so many things that deeply in her heart. And when I talk her concern or her anxiety about this to other folks, people may not understand her, like why do you care, or why you did all these things to make things happen. You know, everyone trying to take care of themselves. So that's why people like her make things happen. And she has that mission driven like a force to force her to move forward, even though there's so many difficulties. So I think Edward and I, also some other CMRC teams, she always mentions we are the families, Chinese families, and every time she came here to share her thoughts with us. So that's why we understand her really deeply. So that's why I think our team in China is so committed, inspired by her. Like, we care about world peace. We want to be friends.
Yeah, and she would be, you know, so happy with that because, you know, she always, you know, liked to dream big. And so when the opportunity came to work with all of you, I know that was kind of her life's calling, you know, to branch out and to share all of her knowledge and, you know, inspire, you know, families in China. So,
yeah. Thank you so much. I want to share one memory because you just brought that up. And I think one time when I met her in your museum during my trip in Hawaii, and I talked about all the work we need to do and blah, 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 and like non-stopping. And suddenly she was like, "Nee, why are you doing all this?" Like, it strikes me like why I'm doing all this. Like it's hard work, and you just trying to sacrifice everything for it, and you have no family time, or you just are trying to work it hard, but you don't know why. And I said, I don't know. Then I start crying. I said, you tell me why. So that's an interesting conversation, but I think that keeps reminding me, thinking about why I'm doing things, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and what's the purpose, and how it's going to serve children and families in China. So whenever I came to the museum and I watched children play and laughing, I said, I know why. It's not like I do not know why. I know why. Just at that moment, I was just thinking about what I'm supposed to do, and not thinking about like why I committed so much on this. So thank you so much for bringing those memories back to life. So questions for Edward. So I know you start working with CMRC, and we work shoulder to shoulder, hands down for so many years, and you're one of the pioneer members. I know some of the members also here today to hearing the stories and the memory of the whole process. So I think for your experience, I want you to share your most treasured takeaway from this whole process.
Well, thank you. And looking back the past 10 years, a lot has happened. And I myself grown quite a bit from my 20s to my 30s. And besides the visible accomplishments, like the project we've completed, my most cherished takeaway should be the friendship I've made along the way, both here in China and over in the US. Yes, I think China and the US are pretty different, and there are significant difference, even disagreement. But what I've witnessed from an individual perspective are the real people with their own stories. And I found the majority of the people are pretty much the same everywhere, friendly and open to connect. We cannot predict what will happen next, but I believe that as long as we are willing to understand each other, and communicate more, and we can always find common ground beside differences, uh, beyond the differences, because we are human beings and we are all want to create a better future for the next generation. And we all believe in love and peace, and we are all passing on the spirit of aloha. That is what Loretta taught me and what still warm my heart until now. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Edward, for sharing that. I know you and Loretta has a special relationship. You share a lot of things and
Yeah.
very sensitive, and you know each other when you're all anxious. I still remember those moments. And you guys like secretly talking about something, and we know you share something in common. So that's a great life experiences. So I think we're talked about a lot of things we have done for the past 10 years. With Loretta's idea of bridging culture between East and West. So looking at future, the world is more complicated and a lot of things happening. And so what's your thinking on CMRC's role in the future in this kind of a global context, how we can do something to facilitate intercultural exchange and how that may benefit early childhood education development in China and beyond?
That's a challenging question. Quite tough. Over the past 10 years, CMRC and Discovery Center has been working closely together, bringing Children's Museum back to China and making some breakthrough in research practice and policy along the way. It's been great to see Chinese professionals and parents recognizing the value of this collaboration and benefits from the collaboration. Looking ahead, I think CMRC playing a couple key roles. Firstly, we can lead the way as an example, encouraging and inspiring others to team up and keep teamwork going. Secondly, CMRC has launched a project and served as a hub for the collaboration. We've got thousands of professionals sharing ideas and best practice on our platform, and we are open to input from international colleagues too. Still, I'd like to emphasize the Children's Museum may vary across different cultures, Western or Eastern, but we all share a common goal, serving kids, because kids are our collective future. There's really no reason why we stop collaborating. It's not about politics and or ideologies. It's about something doing what's best for the little ones. I think Ni, as the founding director of CMRC, you may have some suggestion on this.
You throw it back to me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'm happy that we're continue doing what we're doing, and we're trying to make an impact. I think in today's world, it's moving towards segregation instead of like a collaboration. I think it's hard for us to collaborate internationally or reach out to people. But I think still in that time, a lot of people, like I talk with other children's museum folks, they think at this point of time, people to people communication is more important than before. So I think through all kinds of means, we establish those collaboration or giving people to talk to each other or working on some small projects would help to facilitate mutual understandings. That's really important. I think if you don't try to reach out to people and talk to them, trying to understand their perspective, they're always misunderstanding, and they're always like, it may grow up to something really nasty if you don't try to solve small conflict or small problems. So I think CMRC has the platform. We already have the community there, and we bring in different voices, helping them to hearing others thinking outside China or across the globe. What are people doing? So we can serve as a hub to help them to know more and to understand more.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Edward. That's a good strategy. You can throw back questions.
Great. Thank
Okay.
you for the addition. Yes.
Okay, so we have 3 questions from Q&A. If you have more questions from audience, if you want to ask more questions, you can just feel free to post on the Q&A. And first one is from, hey, Cassie, I know you, Cassie. So Cassie throw a question to me. So she wants to know, what's the biggest challenge that I found in all my efforts in transforming or advancing early childhood education in China? How did you overcome it? I should say I did not overcome it at all. I tried my best. So I think the biggest challenge is the mindset. You know, we all grow up or being educated in the Chinese way of education. Is focused a lot on drilling, and you're doing things very efficiently. You're trying to finish tasks as soon as possible. So we're very efficient. Sometimes I think I was like working like a machine without human side of emotion or thinking. So, but then that challenge comes across to me when I have the education in the US and start thinking about, oh, you can think for yourself, you know, things not like people like stuff things in your brain. You need to have your own thinking and trying to have your own thoughts. That's critical thinking part is really difficult. So in terms of advancing early childhood education in China, we as educators, if we think in a very, very stigmatic way, we're trying to like build things in other people's brain. That's the most difficult thing I think I thought about in the whole process. At the beginning of my children's museum journey, I still have that kind of mindset. I think I learned something in the US. It's great. And I want to make a change in China and trying to stuff that idea into parents or children. I keep constantly telling them, this is the correct way to raise your children. You're doing the wrong thing if you're doing the other way. And that's still the mindset is constantly challenging me. And after this whole 10 years, I always talking about like learning about children's museum or the idea of education is like peeling the onion. At the beginning, you think you know it. And then when you get to know it more, you're peeling the second layer. And then until you get to the core, you know, it's not right. Like it's superficial at the beginning. And you really know the essence and what you need to do. So I think I should say the biggest lesson, not the overcoming it, that I learned is to stay open-minded and to stay curious as a children so you can really embrace different ideas and incorporate into our approach of education. So children can really have that kind of a critical thinking skills or can be creative. So yeah, thank you, Cassie, for your question. I had a hard time thinking like, so I think the second question I should direct it to Edward. It's from Cindy Ming. Thank you for your question. She want to know like to what extent does Chinese culture affect the offerings of children's museum in Beijing and Huhat? What differences are there to the activities on offer in Huhat Children's Discovery Center? I direct this to Edward because he also served on the education director of Huhat Children's Discovery Center at the beginning phase of the museum. So he designed some programs especially targeted to Huhat families. Maybe you can talk about that and how Huhat Children's Discovery is so different from the US Museum.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. Yes, I was the educator in Huhat Children's Museum. And I'm from Huhat. Huhat is my hometown too. And yes, and I'm the minority. I mean, yeah, I'm Hui, not Mongolia, not Han. Yeah, so as I said before, Hohhot is similar to Hawaii. It's a cultural melting pot. So in Hohhot Museum, we provide a lot of cultural programs. Yeah, for different person. We aim to yeah, promote the understanding of each other. I mean, to make people to understand each other better from the little one. Yeah. And I remember we have a program named ambassador of different groups. Yes, that's really successful. And also in China, these two museums are different. Yeah, based on where it is. The capital city and the Hohhot, the border province. Yeah, they're different. Yeah, and that's what we learned from the Honolulu, I mean the Hawaii Discovery Center. And also I'm wondering whether Liane can provide some experience on that.
He's good at throwing back questions.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, for Loretta was Chinese, and so for her, her culture did influence when she was designing our museum here. She actually dedicated a whole gallery called Your Rainbow World. That's all different cultural houses from around the world, though mostly reflecting the immigrant population to Hawaii. So we do have, for example, like a Chinese house in that gallery. And for her, it was really important. She wanted children in Hawaii to know and understand their ethnic and cultural heritage, which is why she had that gallery up there. And for us, we do a lot of, same as the China museums, but educational programming. So most recently, we just celebrated Chinese New Year with a lion dance and a whole bunch of cultural crafts. And then just this past weekend, we had the Lantern Festival. And so there's lots of opportunities to showcase not only Chinese culture, but cultures from all around the world. And again, that kind of feeds into just Loretta's desire for, teaching children about cultural diversity and, other people, and celebrating, all of our similarities and our differences. But in general, all children's museums are very similar in concept. So our exhibits, some of them are similar. We have similar sections like about your body or a town area. But some are all, some museums also do galleries that are specific to kind of their location and their, where they're from. So.
Thank you, Liane, for add on to this. And I want to elaborate on Edward's talking about Hohhot. Hohhot, it's a special region in China. It's a minority group. A lot of different groups living in that area. So when we designed that museum, we have a general idea to have we have a family gallery. So we want to representing the minority groups locally. So we have 5 different family settings from different minority groups. And that's the part of design, like you have the space designed that way. But in terms of content, we want it to be relate to local families. So that's Edward talk about the ambassadors. We recruit ambassadors locally, like they represent different minority groups. So even before our museum were open to public, we have such kind of a traveling exhibits, taking those families with us. You bring whatever you have in your family, you want to share with other people. And they really bring a lot of great stuff we never seen, from their families, because there are 3 generations in Hawaii. So they have a lot of rich culture there, and they have a lot of family collections. And they talk about the stories with children, families. And we have a lot of visitors coming to the traveling exhibits. We rented the place and we want them to tell their stories, and they're so proud. And also after, I think some of them still showing their family pictures in our museum. So make sure that this is really a representation of their family setting. So I think that's really how we want to do things, to make sure the local families feel the sense of belongings. It's not like something we brought from the US and just to try to put there and you just enjoy it. It's not something relevant. So thank you, Cindy, for that question. I hope we
One
answered that.
thing, yeah,
Okay.
just one thing. It's one majority and 4 minority.
Okay.
No, it's hard.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the time.
yeah, right. So it's a very mixed groups. So we give each kind of family their own space to talk about their stories and showcase their life. A third question, I think I can address that also from Cindy. She cared about, are the children's museums self-sustaining financially? Do they still require external subsidies? That's a really good question. I'm still serving on the board as a board member of these two pilot children's museums. For Beijing, they charge entrance tickets for children's like less than $10. And for adults, it's even less. I think it's just $2 or $3. Very, very low tickets, entrance tickets. But because of the circulation, because of the visitors, so their demands is really high. So they have government subsidies. Their human resources or the people they hired can be paid by the government institution. So, and their space is free, from the government. So they are really self-sustaining, and they even have extra funding every year from the ticketing, and they can do other programs, or they can improve the exhibits or programs in the term. For Huhat, we do have government funding supporting all the operations of the museum, so we can open it freely to the public. Even though we proposed several times to local government, we should charge some minimum fee, so the government wouldn't have such a liability to pay for the operation every year, because it's a lot of money. And the government refused to do so. They think it's a really nice opportunity for local families to enjoy the museum freely. So they're willing to put the operational funds to the museum. So we have to have a more detailed budgeting to the government. So make sure we have everything listed so we can operate the museum without any problem. The only thing is, if you rely on government funding, then the projects you can do or renovation or improvement will be limited by the funding. So you need to think about how to get their approval. So there's a more close collaboration between the government and the operation institution. So so far so good. We are working on the sustainability of the museum. Okay, here we got another question to all speakers. Could you share from Jingya Zhu? Could you share some advice for students who wish to contribute to the Children's Museums build in China? What are some potential starting points? Edward, I think that's a question for you.
Johnny CMRC, please.
Okay. Okay, that's your answer. You can elaborate a bit.
Yes, I welcome them and join us and to work together. Yeah.
Okay. He's actively recruiting. Yeah.
Well, you and Edward would be the the go-to people to get involved, because all that's happening in China, and I think it's great if there are students out there that want to join in on this, because it's such an amazing project to be a part of.
Yeah, thank you, Liane. And I think I want to share Edward and CMRC team. We already built up a called Early Learning Empowerment platform. So that's like a community learning group. So you can join that group. There are a lot of students, researchers, practitioners in that group. We already have how many of them? I don't know the current data. Maybe Edward knows.
Thousands of people.
Thousands of
people. Yeah.
Okay, thousands of people inside the group. I think if you join the group, you are in the circle, and you can know a lot of professionals in the field, and you can connect with them and asking questions. And we also have all the free learning materials and in that group, so you can learn. And if you're in China, you can reach out to Edward. He's there. So maybe you can have the opportunity to visit some of the museums, or even serve as a volunteers or something. You can start learning, or as a tour to learn something from their practice.
Yeah, even if they are based in the state or other countries, still they can contribute their.
Okay, no matter where you are, we need you.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. And
Actually, I have one.
oh, really? Okay.
Thank you so much for your, presentation. This was so informative and so inspiring. But what I noticed was actually that Children's Museum is as much about educating children than it is about parents, right? And I thought that Ni made this great point. I think it was part of the video when said that talking to children and they never think about creativity, and why that is. But I was wondering, so I think you working in the field, this is for all three of you, right? You realize that children's education is just like children's book. It's not just about children, it's also about the parents and the adults, right? There is probably more than adults can learn than children. Okay, so how do you incorporate that, I mean, knowing that children's education and museums are as much for children as they are for parents, right? What activities or how do you incorporate that into the museums themselves, right? Or is this just sort of a side effect or something that you think the museums are primarily for the children, but I mean, they go there with the parents, right? And the parents probably participate in the activities and then learn something through that. Is that a conscious part that's worked into that, or is the education of parents sort of a spin-off of this? And so then this is for all three of you, right? Even in Hawaii.
That's really a great question. That's a great. I think Liane can start with your experiences.
Thank you, Ni. No, it's actually really funny though, because Loretta used to always say that our museum is for the young and young at heart, and so she always recognized that children's museums are very much about family learning and recognizing that, parents are their children's first teacher. And so, we have obviously young children that come to the center, but we also have groups of senior citizens that come without any children, because, just the activity of playing and being interactive and hands-on, anyone at any age can enjoy that.
Yes.
And so sometimes, it's our greatest pleasure when we see, parents having just as much or more fun than their children playing. But I think for us, one of the conscious things that we do is just when we work with our employees who facilitate play in our exhibit galleries, is modeling the behavior for parents. Sometimes it's hard for them to understand how to engage and how to play. And so if we see a parent that might be kind of more standing in the background and just watching, one of our staff will go in there and kind of model the questions that they can ask or play with their child. And then we always then find a way to include and invite the parent in. So then we kind of excuse ourselves from the play experience and then invite the parent in to join in. And they usually generally always take the cue and jump right in. So yes, family learning is extremely important, in a children's museum setting.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Liane. I know that's why your museum is so different from many other children's museums in the US where I've been visited. When we first went into museum, even the setting looks similar, like children's museum setting, but the staff, she has amazing staff, like who can really modeling the behavior. Some other bigger museums, there's stuff just standing there, don't play with children, but their stuff just really as a role model. And so that's, I think that's strengthened what Liane said about it's a conscientious, it's a conscious practice. You model that behavior, and parents think, hey, you can play with our children, so have so much fun. I should deserve that too. They kind of jealous of that process. And I think also when we designed our Beijing museum, we kind of didn't put parents in the picture. We always think, well, this is for children. So I think that's one mistake. When in reflection we made that the whole space looked like very is for children. And parents, sometimes that space will make them think, this is not for me. I don't play here. My children play here. So a lot of behaviors are just standing behind their children or doing their own business. The children play by themselves. So that's actually part of my research, why they don't play with their children. And then I dig very deeply into their thinking and their logic. And then I start understand the cultural influence behind all these behaviors. So that's why I designed the intervention to include parents in children's play. That's called quality time. And they find out like it's fun to play with children, also help their children to develop critical skills for their life. So this is an ongoing project. Edward's still helping. We have another funding coming to support that quality time projects. So parents can learn skills, how to play with their children to benefit their children's learning, because they want to do everything for their children. They don't know. They can play to achieve all those goals.
And
Right,
one thing I want to add that is, I think the parent, I don't want to use the word educate the parent to do something, because parents are our partner. I mean, with the floor, museum floor, staff. Yeah, so I think, yeah, the museum provide environment for family learning, and we want them to spend some quality time in the museum and outside the museum. That's what we want to do. Yeah.
Great.
Right, because
All right. Yeah. One concluding comment, Ni?
Yeah, because I just want to add one more. Like, they came to the museum probably some families multiple times a year, some just once per year. It's very limited time to have an impact on children. So when we have that idea accepted into parents and they can bring that idea back home, then that's a real impact to their daily interaction. Yeah, that's the only add-on. Yeah, I
Okay,
think
great.
we're running out of time.
We're running out of time. I mean, we could go probably, sorry, we probably go on for another 2 hours. This is so interesting, but unfortunately we are running out of time. So before I close today's session, I would like to announce our next CCS webinar that is featured as a community voice on March 4th, which is actually a Monday, not a Wednesday. And it's an in-person event. It's a Monday from noon to 1 at George Hall, 227. And the topic is everything I learned in a Chinese restaurant. And the speaker is actually Curtis Chan, who is a nationwide well-established writer, activist, director, and producer. And CCS is co-hosting this event that is sponsored by the Center for Oral History. Okay, so to conclude today's session, please join me in a round of virtual applause. I see a lot of virtual applause here. Great, and keep them coming in. And thanking our distinguished 3 panelists today for joining our CCS webinar, for their informative presentation and their inspiring dialogues. I'm sure we all learned a lot. And many thanks to our audience for attending our session today, for your comments and questions. And please remember to fill out the survey, which you will receive after you log off, right, from this CCS webinar session. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Liane. Thank you, Edward.
Thank you. Thank you for the parts
Goodbye,
involved.
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too. Go back to sleep.
Bye.